Well, in its first meeting for 2024, South Africa's Monetary Policy Committee decides which way interest rates will go. Economists and households will be holding their breath to see whether they hold, rise, or herald the start of a cutting drive. SABC News Economics Editor Tshepo Mongoai joins us now. Tshepo, good evening to you and welcome. I hope we can have more positive discussions this year on things beyond just the interest rates. But January traditionally is the longest month of the year, and so many households are just waiting, for payday. So wondering whether this is a moment for the MPC to decide to stay flat, cut, or inflate is going to be one that we're all going to be watching quite closely. But based on what you've been hearing and who you've been speaking to, what does the consensus indicate?
Well, the consensus is that the bank is likely to pause, as they've been doing in recent meetings, and wait and see. And of course, the tone of the Monetary Policy Committee is very important to get a sense of the current development and where they expect things to go. But we can see the picture broadly that things are not as bad as they were before. On the inflation side, there's some reprieve here and there, although cost of living generally remain quite elevated, but we've seen the fuel price about 2.7% down in the previous month, and we also seeing food inflation coming down at around 9%. So there are signs generally. Some of the structural issues that have been keeping prices high, like the electricity constraints. We're seeing some positive developments that points that perhaps the Reserve Bank may start consider a cut. And not just for South Africa. Global inflation has also eased, and that creates space. But of course, there are risks. There are things that we don't know. We know markets don't like uncertainty. The outcome of the elections, it's one elephant in the room that could push the rand out of control and even much weaker. It's one risk because we don't know what's going to happen, and everyone is just waiting for that. And we know that once the rand weakens because of such news, it is going to create inflationary pressures. The US as well. Donald Trump might come back, go to the White House. We've got AGOA, of course, and which is very, very important for South Africa. We need it. If things don't go away, that would also, weaken the rand, and inflation will return in a big way, and that will put many South Africans under pressure. Wage increases, I don't think it's much of a risk there. Public sector wage increase was around 7%. The last one, I think this year is going to be 6%. Of course, it's heavy for government, but in terms of inflationary pressures, I don't think wages, people are really under pressure. Even if they get 6-7% increases, households are really, really under pressure because of monies going elsewhere. Debt servicing cost is high. So there's a need to stimulate spending in the local economy.
And that's really the point I wanted to go to next. While the outlook looks good, if we're at the beginning of a cutting cycle, that certainly is a huge sigh of relief for many families, because it means the budget adjustments they would have had to make to accommodate the higher interest rates, that's probably gravy in their pockets unless they want to keep investing, let's say, for example, into their bank accounts. And if you look at inflation also moderating throughout the year, those two things work quite nicely together. But talk to us about inventive ideas that we must apply in this economy now to deal with the issue of inflation, not just relying on rates as a mechanism to control it?
Well, I think there's been a lot of research, and I think even the Reserve Bank have actually raised that, this is what we are given by policymakers. If there is a need to change this blunt instrument that we currently apply, then I suppose that's the space for National Treasury and policymakers, Parliament, to look at ways and means to ensure that we don't just apply this thing. And of course, monetary policy is an instrument that works. It's got its own limitation, but it's been proven and tested to be working. Of course, there are dynamics for each economy that maybe it needs to be adopted and adjusted to be more relevant to the local conditions. South Africa, we've got very high unemployment rate, and of course, many people are outside that. When interest rates move and all that, it doesn't apply to them. But of course, it does affect them. You've got people who just want to get some kind of a job in order to survive.
Yeah, especially when you think that food inflation impacts them directly, notwithstanding the VAT. The big idea is to get as many people as possible back into the economy, working, being able to predict, have a future for themselves, being able to be, to buy stuff and make investments and so on. That's the ideal scenario. Yeah,
I think many government initiatives are trying to address that. Of course, there are shortcomings. In order to stimulate the economy, you need investment. You need people who believe in that economy. You need, the visa regime that allow that. Issues of power and infrastructure, that remains an issue. I mean, we're doing a story about the construction mafia. If you want to get that infrastructure spending going, you need to be decisive in dealing with that. So you have a lot of issues that are actually are in a stumbling block to plans that can actually grow the economy and get more people participating in the economy and deal with these challenges that we are facing.
Well, let's see if it does get resolved, hopefully in that capacity and getting that momentum of people into jobs. Thank you so much. Tshepo Mongoai is our SABC News Economics Editor, just looking ahead to what will come out of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting.